Welcome back.
Welcome to Bonded Voices Generation X. Today we're taking a ride down memory lane to explore the car culture that defined a generation. If you grew up in the 70s, 80s, or early 90s, cruising wasn't just about driving. It was a social ritual, a rite of passage, and for many, our first freedoms. From hanging out at the drive-ins to Dragon Main, the cruising scene of Generation X was fueled by music, friendship, and the thrill of the open road. In this episode, we're going to dive into what made cruising special and how it affected Generation X. This is Loren.
And I'm Greg.
And I'm Ian.
So as we were talking beforehand, it seems like cruising wasn't a big deal in the UK.
No, I didn't even know it existed. It was something, I think maybe Greece was the first movie we thought about cruising. Or even were introduced to it from what I can remember.
Hollywood
Nights. American
Graffiti.
American Graffiti definitely showed more of the cruising scene. So there's a difference between driving and cruising. For me, cruising meant, so specifically I remember this, there was a stretch of road and you would go, northbound, and then you'd make a U-turn, southbound, make a U-turn, northbound, and you just went back and forth on this road. Not like, we're going to cruise to another city, which could be that same, you've got your buddies, you got the music, you got your freedom. So cruising to me was similar group of cars. You're all kind of together, giving each other a hard time, maybe racing. But even American Graffiti did a little bit of that. Greece didn't do a whole lot of that. There was a lot of driving in the cars,
right? But
not the actual art of cruising.
Was racing a big part of cruising?
I don't think so. For the group that I was, it was. So the big area for us, so when I moved to Phoenix, everyone cruised central. That was, you go north, from all the way down to all the way up to probably, I think, not even Bethany. It was maybe like Indian School or maybe Camelback, and then you flipped around. But cars would be parked all along the way. So you would see people from all over town. So, I went to Shadow Mountain High School, but you'd see people from Chaparral or Westwood or where people from all over town would go to Central.
Did the cars have guys and girls in the same car? Or was girls in one car, guys in another car? Was there a rule around that?
I think
there's no rules.
I think it was more like a high school dance. There were definitely guys in, most of the time, what I recall, guys in a car, girls in a car.
Oh.
Every once in a while, you might have 3 guys and one of the girlfriends in one car. But what I more vividly remember was, because it was definitely cruising with your buddies, your guy friends. Whoa, look at the car! Look at the girls in that car! Hurry up, turn around, chase them down.
Oh, really? Okay.
That's how you met people from other schools. Back in the day, that was the only way you would meet. So I remember my buddies and I, we were down there, and we all were up from Shadow Mountain, but we met a carload of girls that were at Camelback High School. So that's how, otherwise we wouldn't interact.
Was it bench seats and the big cars with the wobbly suspension?
It was whatever you had.
Oh, right, okay. It wasn't fancy cars?
Sure. Well, everybody would wash up their car and get it ready to cruise on Saturday night.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
And then you see people that would customize their cars, so customization was a big deal. So late 80s, at least in Phoenix, it was the slammed lowrider trucks was a big deal. So they'd be so low that they couldn't go over speed bumps type of thing. And you'd see like 3 of those guys, all the buddies that had the same car would join up and they'd cruise in a pack. And then,
so straight white kids were doing cruising before it became a big thing in the hip hop community and in the Latino culture.
Oh no, I don't know. So cruising actually, I think, goes back to the 50s.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
but I don't know, because if you look, like, if you think about the lowrider culture, they've been doing cruising. I don't know if it was 50s or 60s, because some of the lowrider groups are really strong with their club, and some of those clubs are multi-generational,
right?
Where they've been rebuilding these cars and building these work of art for passing it down amongst the family. So I don't know if it was first big in the white culture and then That's a good question.
It was. I think it was out here at least. It's a mix. It was. You didn't say, "Oh, well, it's a bunch of Caucasian kids over here and a bunch of Hispanic kids over here." It was just everybody as one group.
Right.
It was. It was our form of social networking. If you really think about it, it was a way for people from all different parts of the valley to get together. And, it wasn't just here. So I remember.
How did they communicate that was going to happen, though?
It was every Saturday night.
It was just given.
Given. Yep. It was that was what it is. You cruise on Friday or Saturday night. When I was in California, we would cruise PCH. We'd start at Camp Pendleton and drive all the way down to San Diego.
Yeah.
And then just driving beach town to beach town, just cranking music, it was just a bunch of guys having a good time. If you saw a carload of girls, you'd flag them down, you talk to them, but there was a ton of people that did it back then. And so, and even when I was in the Midwest, just various places I was in the Midwest, small towns, there's nothing to do. So everyone drag Main Street. And then.
So there's no destination. It was just, you go to a place, you drive around, but it wasn't like we're all going to end the night at.
No, there wasn't. It was, we're going to do this big loop. It's a couple miles here in Phoenix.
Right.
It was, to Loren's point, central. I think it went from maybe Washington to Indian School. Maybe, I don't know if it went that far south. But it was just this big, long loop. And the police would start to track. And if you passed 2 or 3 times within an hour, and so then you would see people really slowing down. Like Loren mentioned, you might get 3 of the same car, and they might be 3 wide in traffic, slowing everybody down behind them, just having fun, goofing off.
Right.
Police didn't like it.
People switching cars, at a stoplight. Hey, come ride with us for a bit. Or you go, everyone. So when I was talking to the boys, they're like, "Oh, we kind of do it where we'll all meet at In-N-Out Burger and everyone hangs out there." That's, their version of a drive-in, hanging out at a drive-in, cruising around until you get to a destination, all hang out. It's just
because back in the day, Phoenix had drive-ins.
Oh yeah,
drive-in movies, quite a few of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Definitely.
But I don't ever remember.
That was never the destination.
No. Well, I can remember in high school, hey, we're going to the drive-in, and we might meet somewhere, and there might be a caravan of a few cars, but it was not there was rarely a destination on cruise nights.
Okay.
Yeah, it was just a way to get together. It was a way for friends to hang out. So literally, it was the places like when we had our talk about albums. Hey, I got this new CD or this new tape. Let's listen to it. And people would soup up their radios. So that's when, I got a new Alpine and I've got these Rockford Fosgates now. I got
yes.
If my windshield isn't rattling, it's not loud enough.
Did you ever cruise Mill?
Yes.
Mill was an interesting road because some parts it was 2 lanes each way, and some parts I think it was restricted to 1 lane each way. So then it was because it was more so you're like cruising next to your buddies. It was almost like this pack of cars that would go down the road together, turn around, and come back. But Mill was a little bit more unique, given the layout.
I still see. It's an older generation that will cruise every once in a while. So the pavilions have the car show. And as cars come in, there'll be usually a group of cars that will come in together, these classic cars. Or it could be some new hot rods. The cars of the same make and style will come in together. And then they'll leave together. And they're kind of cruising that whole area. It was a fun time. And it allowed people to have fun and talk and experience.
You guys had every Friday night, it was a given. What is there today that is a given that X will happen every whenever? There's nothing anymore.
I think we're all digitized. So it's like, oh, well, I'll see you online. They'll play video games. That's how they socialize. There isn't the socialization and learning to meet new people like we used to do. We used to have, physically get it. It's an analog version of social networking where you had to get out there and physically do it.
So what about food cruising? Would you go with the restaurants on the cruise loop? that you'd stop on, or
Well, I'm sure there is. I
did
mean,
no one really?
you would stop occasionally, and there'd always be a line backed up. So on Mill Avenue was always that the Jack in the Box that was always packed. You couldn't get into.
Same thing on Central.
Yes.
There was a Jack in the Box on Central. And then there was a hot dog place on Central too. But it wasn't as much it was just necessity. Also, if the police had figured out you had passed however many times, and you're like, all right, let's go to Jack in the Box and get a burger.
That's the reason people would
And
pull
reset the clock.
Okay, so the point of the police thing was if they knew the loop, and if you were doing it too fast, they knew you were speeding or something.
They just didn't people in the neighborhood.
They were. So the challenge was, as you could imagine, for all teenagers, then you get into this competition, testosterone situation where maybe it didn't start out racing, but then you might have a couple of people that position themselves to be next to each other at a stoplight and then take off and race.
Okay.
And so then there was also the concern of, is there any gang-related activity? Is there any other illegal activities? So it would draw the police in. Metro Center was a bigger area to cruise, and they actually shut down Metro Center. I think they eventually did Central as well. Just because it was, I think from the police point of view, it was like, let's just keep them moving. Keep the kids moving, keep them occupied, go somewhere else. Don't just stay in this
because you could have,
circles.
1,000 teenagers sitting in, a couple square blocks on Central. That's, primarily businesses, and you don't want all those kids sitting in their parking lot. But for us, it was a blast.
Which is kind of funny because now all those kids that cruised own those businesses. At least that generation.
They're like, I love this place. This is my favorite building.
Why can't we get more business down here?
Right.
It'd be great about this cruising thing, and then all these cars sitting outside.
But that was, we experienced a lot of different music. That was how you learned, a lot of different bands from, this car over here is playing this music. And
yeah, it probably was very much a way to influence others with new releases. It'd be interesting to think whether the music industry used to give certain people like music to play in those cruising groups around the country.
Well, I think
just to influence.
Sure, they could have. I recall there were cars that would go really crazy on the sound systems, specifically for cruising, and it would be like, I remember there was a Volkswagen Bug here in Phoenix that they had the two seats in the front, and then there was this wall of just speakers. And it was crazy loud. It was in all the magazines, but you would see that car cruising pretty regularly. You could hear it before you see it. I think about those people now. I wonder if those people are like ear doctors or something.
Yeah. Well, when we were talking about the music in one of our past episodes, there's music that like I couldn't play at home because of the lyrics or the style. Parents didn't like it, so your car was the only place where you could actually be yourself
and safely play that stuff. Wow!
And fuel was cheap.
Yeah.
I don't remember spending a whole lot in gas in high school.
I remember gas was under $1.
Oh, it probably was. I think when I first came to the States, it was 97 cents in California. So, it's got to be cheap everywhere else if it was 97 cents there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can also remember I had a Volkswagen at the time and really was into the Volkswagen scene. And I can remember wanting to see certain cars on the cruise. Like, oh man, I hope we see this car. I hope we see that car. Just because you would go there regularly and you might be able to meet the person that you've seen that car. And you're like, oh my gosh, how did you do this? How did you do that? Look at that. That's beautiful.
Yeah, people would line up, they'd pop their hoods and...
Oh, so they did that as well. It wasn't always in motion.
No, all the parking lots were always full.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a bit of a car show built in with slow driving.
Yeah, it was people hanging out. They were...
You get bored, jump in the car, cruise.
Yeah.
Then if you could find a spot, take a spot. I don't even know if there's still anywhere to parallel park along Central. There was back then.
I have no idea. I don't think there is. I think it's all...
Probably not. Well, because you got light rail running.
I don't know anywhere where they parallel park in this city.
Downtown.
Yeah, very few places down there. But you're right. That's probably the only place.
Yeah.
So funny because in LA or California, like if you don't have a parallel park in California, you ain't gonna last there long.
You don't have to learn how to. You don't have to know how to parallel park to get a driver's license in Arizona.
You don't know how to
No, they don't
practice
even
any
test
type
you on it.
of parking. It used to be parallel, then it was like you have to do a 3-point turn park, and now it's like, you're good.
You got keys, you're good to go. Yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. Pretty much that's what it is now.
So in the UK, how did you guys how did you get freedom from family and
We just on bikes probably more. That's my memories. I don't remember ever like the idea of just driving around using the petrol in your car.
So, were there people that would customize the sound systems and make them really loud
Probably.
in the cars?
Yeah, they
I
were
think-
my group, so I probably didn't hang out with those sort of folks.
I think car culture is more of an American
It
thing.
is absolutely
Because we have to,
You had the bigger cars.
and you have to move, you have to get around.
Yeah.
So I'm sure cruising isn't a thing in New York City, but
Yeah, can you imagine?
True.
the West Coast, everyththing's so expansive. you
Yeah.
know?
It probably was more Midwest, out to the west. Did they? I wonder if they did it in California. I wonder if it was big on Hollywood Boulevard. It probably actually
sure.
was.
I'm sure it is.
Because I remember when I was there, it was even on Hollywood Boulevard. People would cruise Sunset, they'd cruise Hollywood Boulevard as well. Just looking at all the lights. Now it's like homeless person, drug addict. Oh, he's dead. Oh, there's a light. So I don't know if they do it as much anymore.
I think when I was there, Griffith Observatory, where you go up that and you can see the valley from there in LA.
Yeah,
That's still a popular one where I see a bunch of old cars.
yeah,
going up there.
interesting. I wonder if you had the English bus cruising. You get the top floor of the double-decker bus.
I think there are some people that have brought those buses over here stateside.
Oh, I'd love to have one of them now. That'd just be legendary.
Yeah, that would be. Yeah, I think it's probably just the American car culture.
Yeah.
And I don't know. So I wonder if Australia did any cruises. Because in some ways, the Australian car culture is similar because it's an expansive
Yep.
chunk of land. And there are cars that are built specifically for Australia that may or may not look like cars that are built for the United States, but they're built by Chevrolet and Ford. And
Well, Holden's the big car company down there, and they would make a lot of the bigger cars.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure.
So I would imagine they probably did cruise.
Yeah.
I remember getting my first vehicle was a major thing. It was the freedom of being able to go, and I didn't need to find a bike or ride the bus or bum a ride from somebody. It was a huge amount of freedom.
Yeah, mine was the VW Golf. Or was it a Golf? No, Polo. VW Polo. I think that's what the first car I had. It wasn't a cruising car. It was 4 wheels and a box.
I'm not familiar with the Polo.
Yeah, it was a smaller
Was it
version of
known
a
as the Golf over here? Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
What was your first car?
Volkswagen Bug.
I had an old Silverado, 70s Silverado truck. Big bench seat. You could fill it. You can get like
Oh, yeah.
6 or 7 people in there.
Oh, no
It was safe.
seatbelts.
Yeah.
Seatbelts. What are those?
Yeah, one of those exactly. Yeah.
All the way
Yeah.
across. Go ahead and lock it in.
Well, that was back when you could actually have people in the bed of your truck too.
Yeah, I recall that.
With the gun rack. Yeah.
Well, I mean, you
Well,
don't need
Subaru built the Brat that came from the factory with
the
seats in the
back.
bed.
Yep, that's true. I forgot about
Wow.
that.
Mm-hmm.
A mini El Camino with seats.
Yep.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I don't know. I think this was the way that our generation here in America. It was freedom. It was a way to express music. It was just one of those things.
So if we want to hear from listeners on their cruising experiences, bondedvoices.com, get on there and tell us about yours. If you didn't have them like me, you can just sympathize. But we'd love to hear from people. What car was your big cruising car?
What was your favorite cruising song?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It was definitely here in town, when I run into people that I know grew up here, or when I'm talking with them and they're of our generation, that was one of my questions. Where did you cruise?
Yeah.
And it was, oh yeah, I always cruised here or here. And those were the three spots that I knew of.
Yeah.
Mill, Central, and Metro Center.
Metro, right.
Yep.
Just whatever part of town you lived in, whatever was closest.
Depends on where you went to meet the girls from.
Yeah. So no one ever used to cruise Paradise Valley Mall. That wasn't a cruising spot.
Nope.
Which is interesting because that was a complete loop. So that would make sense.
It would make sense. That's why I thought that.
I think Metro Center was a
loop as well.
It was, but it was a bigger loop. So
yeah.
Maybe that's why they cruise there.
You do PV Mall and you'd be done in a minute.
It's probably not cool though to be in Paradise Valley cruising compared with those other spots, which are a lot more cool.
I don't know if it was
like culturally cool rather than saguaro and palm trees and Nordstrom cool, the Paradise Valley Mall. So
yeah, definitely reach out. Let us know what you cruised. What kind of car?
Yeah, what was the car?
What was the favorite car? What was the sound system? Did you have the Alpine and the Rockford Fosgate amps and the...
Yeah.
Wow. It throws way back machine.
Yeah.
Well, that wraps it up for this episode. So this is Loren.
I'm Ian.
And I'm Greg. We'll get you next time. Bonded Voices, Season 2, Generation X.